I want to talk about language in video games. No, not German, Spanish, English, American, intentional, French, Russian, Mandarin, or any number of other translations on offer. I mean marketing language. And I'm going to have a bit of fun with this one. Let's chat. But first, my opinion. I'm Tarmack, and this is Feature Creep Satire. Sometimes I like to play a little game. It's called Spot the Bullshit, and it's so much fun that you should try it out the next time you get to watch a video game press conference, especially those press conferences that look a little bit more like a dance club than a press event. Those ones are particularly good for this game. Really, it's just a list of some words that you might hear when you listen to people talking about games, what the marketing folk think or want you to hear, and what they really mean. Just what is a AAA game? I can't find any proper paleontological references that explain the letter scale of video games. Maybe it means something like acceptably advanced assets, or aristocratic affluent alliance, a secret group of rich, overprivileged game developers. You're supposed to look at AAA and see quality. It's like a badge of honor that only those who can spend more than $20 or $30 million on a game get to wear. Doesn't seem to have any correlation to ratings though. Street Fighter V is clearly a AAA title developed by a AAA publisher, but it only has a measly 76-ish on Metacritic. But you know what I found out? It seems to come down to just the simple alphabet. AAA is the best of the best, the creme de la creme. And if you're not AAA, then you make B games. But what happened to A and AA? Imagine the movie industry doing the same. You've all seen a B movie before, so anything that isn't a B movie is a AAA movie. Is anyone getting confused yet? Clearly we have some really good B games, so since there are worse games than those, does that mean that we can extend the scale in the opposite direction? Can we have a double D game? And if so, what level of game would belong in that category? Dead or Alive Extreme 3 seems like the obvious choice. E.T. maybe. That one that Atari buried thousands of in a landfill. Big Rigs was pretty bad. We could ask Jim Sterling. He grabs a hold of all the double Ds that Steam has on offer. It's a good thing they don't allow adult games. Right, moving on. Since we're talking about B games and alphabets, let's talk about beta. Beta. The second letter in the Greek alphabet. Alpha, then beta. There's no triple alpha, so I think we're safe on that front. So beta means that it's time to start getting customer money. At least that's what I think it means. It's so hard to tell these days. We wouldn't want there to be any bugs in the digital store on release because then the customers would be angry. They won't be upset during a beta though. Beta is also code for I am rubber, you are glue. You can't criticize what isn't finished. It's going to be amazing when it's done. You'll see. Done enough to take money? Well, early access or something. Digital store needs bugs fixed, pre-order bonuses. Don't you want to be in a beta test? Everybody wants to be in a beta. It's exclusive. You got to apply though, and your application fee is $60. So that means that even Capcom completely ruined their beta launch of Street Fighter V because the store wasn't active on release. Amateurs with their A game. You got to make sure to bring your A game. You got to bring your AAA game. Though that just sounds like that dork at the office who wants his employees to give 110%. And I've got to ask, on the topic of being invested in a game enough to buy into a beta test, there are some really heavily invested Capcom gamers. We have hardcore gamers, we have core gamers, and we have casual gamers. What happened to the softcore gamers? Does that come before or after casual? Do you want to know why I think we call them casuals instead of softcore gamers? I think it's because casual gamer implies that you actually play games on the odd occasion. Softcore, on the other hand, implies that you just stand there with your games exposed and don't play with them at all, which is fun for nobody. And if you see a hardcore gamer, look out. Grr, rough and tough, manly and gruff, speedrunning, carrying, raiding, fragging, lagging, teabagging, poning, high scoring, combo breaking, and all with a chip on the shoulder that looks suspiciously like it might be made of sodium. To think that only 10 to 15 years ago, these kids were the ones checking over their shoulder in school when they went down the hall. Now they're the ones in charge. The alphas. The triple alphas. Looking down on all those softcore gamers with their exposed games, just hanging out, ready for a nice sharp twist. Ready to pounce on any perceived weakness. Not grammar, that's just nerdy. Actually, they act a lot like frat boys from university. Alpha, Beta, Kappa. Now, if you want to be a hardcore gamer, that's based on your time investment in the game, right? You can still be an awful hardcore gamer, but if you play it all the time, your core is certainly hard. Now, how can there actually be casual games then? Games that people can only physically play occasionally? Well, now that I think about it, those free games with timers like Dungeon Keeper Mobile do certainly stop you from playing. They don't stop you from paying though. Stands to reason that if you really wanted, you could be a hardcore Candy Crush player. I don't know why you'd want to be, but you could do it and nobody has any right to tell you differently. That brings us to free to play. As long as you're old enough, you're free to play whatever game you want. If you're free to play a free-to-play game, though, does that mean if you start paying money that you're not playing anymore? If it's free to play, then paying is a totally different piece of the game and experience, right? So if it's a pay-to-play as well, then really for the people that don't pay, it should be called free-to-play less, since obviously paying gives you more. And I'm always suspicious of killer apps myself. That term scares me. My phone already can tell my heart rate, it knows where I am through GPS, and even when I'm looking at it. The last thing I need is some homicidal game having access to that kind of information. And if it's a mobile game, why do most people play them when stationary on the toilet? Personally, I'm an advocate of them being called shitty games. It seems to fit the location of play better. Lots of people want to talk about game mechanics. This clearly refers to a certified expert in the operation of hardware and software, such as those wonderful, helpful, inexpensive folks over at the Geek Squad, who will gladly, and for a small fee, assist you in the installation of your Xbox or PlayStation game into your console of choice. Diablo 2 just had a new patch the other day, and it's been out for 16 years. Those are some pretty dedicated game mechanics working to keep that retro classic game up and running. But now, since we've moved to an essentially online-only society, now we have games as a service. This is just like game mechanics. Getting your game serviced by a certified game mechanic is an important step, and these particular games seem to need servicing more frequently than others. And with your serviced games, you'll need some downloadable content, or DLC. I hate to break it to you, but everything is downloadable content. Download simply means to copy from one computer system or source to another. So whether that happens over the internet or not, it's still downloadable content. Digital download isn't any better. How the hell else are you going to download it but digitally? How's that analog download coming, Johnny? Well, it's a bit slow, writing all the ones and zeros with a pencil and paper. I've only got 30,000 years left on this download. Now how about some quick ones? Full motion video. What other kind of video would you use? Half motion? Well, I guess there's stop motion, but Armacrog wasn't a very good game. Exclusive might as well just mean delayed everywhere else, but don't worry, it's coming eventually. Things like exclusive beta or exclusive pre-order strike me as odd. They're exclusive in the same way as buying a jug of milk is exclusive. Exclusive for the low price of what the game would cost on launch day anyways. This is not a very high bar for exclusivity. Emergent gameplay. This is what happens when you're sitting at home, enjoying your drink of choice, Crown and Coke in my case, maybe petting your cat. Suddenly and unexpectedly you realize, holy shit, I'm playing a video game. That's emergent gameplay. First-person shooter. Everyone, even the maniacs and serial killers, have to start somewhere, and where better than with your first person? Third person, on the other hand, now you've got experience. If you're on your third person, does that make you hardcore or just core? Epic experience, online experience, multiplayer experience, cinematic experience. These are all nonsense combinations of words because everything is an experience. A cinematic experience. Look at how cinematic this game footage is. It's so cinematic. Such a great cinematic video game. When was the last time you had a cinematic experience? Mine involved standing in line, paying way too much for a bag of popcorn, then trying to fit down an aisle of chairs arranged similarly to a crowded city bus, where a child kicked the back of my chair for several hours. I may be missing the cinematic definition that they're using here. From what I can gather, cinematic is like automatic. The game plays itself and doesn't need you to have its fun. This one isn't used by the marketing folk, but it still bugs me. Metroidvania. Why did Metroid get to have the full title in the word? Why does the castle get left out? Seems as though the descriptive word platformer, which describes the concept of a game based on interacting with platforms, just didn't invoke enough emotion for people. So instead, we'll confuse the reader by taking a game where you play a guy with a whip trying to kill Dracula, and a game where you play a woman with power armor, a gun, and a friendly giant jellyfish, and we'll slam them together. I am not convinced by the term sandbox. It's supposed to indicate that you can go anywhere and do anything. I've never seen a sandbox bigger than about 10 feet by 10 feet. Have you? I've seen sand pits that are bigger, seen sandy beaches that are pretty sizable, but a sandbox, no, they're usually pretty small. You can do anything though, just like in a sandbox. All you can do in a sandbox is play with the goddamn sand, which pretty well just means it's sandcastles and that's about it. And the longer you play with the sand, the more of it gets into places you don't want it to get into. Exactly the same way I feel after playing Grand Theft Auto 5 for too long. Iconic is an odd word. It's sort of like getting a nickname. So when a developer or publisher refers to something in their game as iconic, like the Aiden Pierce iconic face mask that came with the Watch Dogs Collector's Edition, it's kind of like that kid in high school who started trying to get people to call him T-Bone, even though he was as skinny as a flagpole and had the personality to match. While we're on the subject of giving yourself titles, why not release a Game of the Year edition? One might assume by the name that a Game of the Year edition would need to have won a Game of the Year award, but that's not the case. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Rising Storm, Orcs Must Die, Men of War Assault Squad, Worms Reloaded, Tribes Ascend, and whatever the hell Badland is, have never won a Game of the Year award. And why would the Game of the Year edition be a different version with added content, the version that one Game of the Year didn't have? Obviously, if it was good enough to win Game of the Year, it doesn't need anything extra. I could see an after Game of the Year edition, though. Complete Edition just makes me wonder what the hell was wrong with all the versions that came before it. Definitive Edition sounds important, but really it just means they aren't going to release any more editions. At least not until they remaster or reboot the genre or series. And last, we've come to my favorite. The best of the best, the video game marketing holy grail, the pinnacle of language, the best, most descriptive word and useful word in the video game industry that has ever been used to date: content. This word is my favorite for two reasons. It's used everywhere. Downloadable content, next generation content, single player content, great new AAA cinematic, hardcore, original, online, interactive, emergent, multiplayer, exclusive, free-to-play beta content. And the second is that while it can apply to quite literally everything, it tells you nothing at the same time. And I say this as a YouTube content creator. What a vomit-inducing phrase that is. And see how it tells you absolutely nothing about what I do. I could make thumbnails, original music, paintings, voiceovers, covers, let's plays, unboxings, pranks, product reviews, beauty tips, those stupid reaction videos, and they're all specific and value-rich words to use instead of the word content. Remember the game we're playing? It's called Spot the Bullshit. Content is one of the most fun words to look out for at conventions and press conferences. It's also really dangerous to use for a drinking game. Don't do it. It's kind of like taking a shot every time a stormtrooper misses. My favorite thing about the word content, though, is that because it means nothing at all, you can hot swap it out with other buzzwords like experience. Or you can just replace it with the word stuff. Try this at home. Watch any convention footage and replace the words content and experience with the word stuff. Does any of the communication get lost? No, of course not. You can just end up imagining what content means to you. Then you get hyped and excited even though they didn't actually tell you anything. It's like when the radio beeps out profanity and your brain just fills in the missing bits. Sometimes the filled-in word is obvious, and other times your brain just picks its favorite one. That's what happened in No Man's Sky. It's going to be filled to the brim with content and experiences. No Man's Sky is like radio censorship. There's your quote for the day. I love playing this game so much, but I have to say, just like after you played in a sandbox for a few hours, you kind of need to shower to get all the grime off of you after listening to marketing language for a long time. So, I'll leave you with a combined one that is used very frequently. Core gamer experience. Pretty easy to figure out what they mean, right? No, of course not. That's the whole point. Feature creep is usually very serious, but I'm a huge George Carlin fan and I wanted to do my own emulation of his airplane bit based on the video game industry. Hopefully it was entertaining for you. If you really enjoyed this, maybe toss it up on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. I think others might get a kick out of it too. And subscribe, because if you're not already, you're too softcore. That's all I have to say. Tarmack away!